Let's talk about managing your mineral rights. We're going to start off with the advantages of actively managing your minerals. And then we'll go into what documents do you need to keep. Do you need originals? Should they be stored on the cloud? Should you have paper copies? How should you organize them? And we're going to also talk about putting all the details of what you own in a mineral management spreadsheet. We actually have a free one that you can download and modify for your own use. And we'll talk about the features that you need to look for when you're evaluating a mineral management software program, and what you need to check for each month in your royalty statement. And if it's all too overwhelming, then finally we're going to talk about how do you outsource the management of your mineral rights. So let's get started. Mineral owners who actively manage their minerals, they know when new wells are permitted. They review their royalty checks to make sure that the decimal interest is correct and the volume and productions are correct. They're more likely to catch underpayments. They're more likely to be connected with other mineral owners, and therefore they probably have some sense of what the value is, like of lease payments and what royalties are common in their area. They're also able to quickly find the information they're looking for on a spreadsheet or in their software. And this also allows them to educate the next generation and make sure that the people that they're leaving their minerals to, usually their children, are up to speed and they're knowledgeable enough that they themselves can take over the management and that the minerals will be properly managed and therefore the income will be maximized. So you're going to need to keep some original documents. You don't need to keep everything, but there are 4 kinds of documents that are really important to keep. The first one are title documents. These are mineral deeds, conveyances, affidavits of heirship, probate documents, anything that is showing the transfer of ownership from one party to another. And as far back as you can go that you have those records, you should keep whatever documents you have for that, because that will show a clean title. And the second category is your oil and gas lease. So any leases that you have, even if it's an expired lease or if it's a current lease, go ahead and put those in your folder as well. You also need a royalty statement if you're receiving checks. You don't need to keep all the royalty statements, but every once in a while, replace the royalty statement sample that you have in your folder, just so that you have one that's sort of reasonably current. And the last category is division orders. You want to keep a copy of every division order. And you can also put that in your spreadsheet or your mineral management software. And when your royalty checks come in, just make sure that they're still paying you on the same decimal interest that you signed in your division order. So there's a lot of ways that you can organize your files. And everybody's going to have their own system. But I really recommend that you keep original documents in file folders or in hanging folders, and that you have scans of those originals that you're also keeping in digital folders on a cloud-based service. So something like iCloud or Google Drive, any of those will be fine. You can also keep those inside of a mineral management software as well. But you should have a scanned copy of whatever you have your originals. And there's a lot of ways to store your original documents. Some people have just a few interests and they don't need a complicated system. Other people have, thousands of mineral rights scattered all over and they need a more complex way to track that. What I've seen a lot is that people will categorize it by state and county, and then section range township or section block abstract. And so you can figure out what method works best for you. But when you put digital copies on the cloud, keep a similar folder structure, and then you can also subdivide the ones on the cloud for leases, royalty statements, the different kinds of documents that you have. And your documents that are on the cloud, you can also include things like maps. You can Google the geology of whatever basin that your minerals are in and include those kind of maps. And sometimes it's very interesting if you overlay your maps, you can find really interesting data that way. it's a good idea to put all the details of what you own in a spreadsheet. You're able to see that high-level information, you're able to see the details, and you're able to manage your minerals more effectively when the information you're looking for is just right there, readily available, and you don't have to go sorting through documents or looking through your files to find it. So you can create your own mineral management spreadsheet, or you can download ours. We've created one that we feel is pretty good, and you can just modify it to suit your own needs. And it's a free download, and it's got multiple tabs, and it's pretty easy to use. It's very basic. So feel free to download that. I'll put the link below. So mineral management software can be really, really helpful. There are quite a few companies that offer a software package, and most of them are cloud-based, and they have some really cool features and some really nice analytics, but they come at a price. So it kind of depends on how much revenue you have coming in and what's happening in the areas around your minerals. You'll have to decide for yourself whether the return on investment is there and whether it makes sense to have a mineral management software. But regardless, it's really good to go and call these companies and just do a walkthrough. Because even if you can't afford it now, doesn't mean that you won't be able to in the future. And it's really good to know what you're missing and maybe find another way to get that same information, or realize that, oh, I should be checking to see if there's any permits going on in my lease or in the offset area, or there's just a lot of things that you might not be aware of that you could be actively managing that you'll become aware of as you go through these walkthroughs and you see what's possible with the different software that they have. So there are 4 basic things that the software does. Most mineral management software has a place where you can attach your documents. You can put your leases and your title documents and your royalty statements, and you can store all of that on their system, which is nice because it's easy to get to the documents. But if you want to switch systems later, that can be kind of a pain. So, you have to decide whether you want to keep your documents there or on the cloud somewhere, or, maybe both. Another thing that most software will do is track the tracts of land that you own an interest in, as well as your leases. So sometimes they have a visual map of this, and they can outline your tract and then also outline the lease line. And that makes it very easy to keep track of, and some of them do this automatically, of what's going on in that lease and just outside of the lease. And you can have alerts, and there's a lot of really cool features around that. These software programs will also help you track your income and make sure that everything is looking good. Sometimes there's an alert that will pop up if you're suddenly being charged differently, your deductions have gone up, or the revenue has gone way down. So there's different reports that you can run that you don't necessarily get from just having your statements come to you, or even if you have some of the digital statements, they don't necessarily give you reports. And so the mineral management software very often is useful in that way. The other thing the software does is it allows you to see what's going on in the area. You can see very easily offset production, new permits. You can see if a well has been permitted right along your lease line where it's going to be taking some of the reserves that you have. So there's just really cool features, and it's really worth checking out whether or not you end up deciding to go with managing your minerals on a spreadsheet, or if you go with a mineral management software program. Each month, or whenever you get a royalty check, you should be just scanning the check and making sure that nothing's changed and you're being paid correctly. So the first thing to check is your decimal interest. Make sure that that matches your division order. And if you have a mineral management spreadsheet or some software, it's really easy to quickly look that up. In fact, the mineral management spreadsheet that we have, which you can download, I'll link to it below, that one has a division order tab, so you can just very easily reference that and make sure that the division order didn't change. You also want to check and make sure that the production matches what has been reported to your state's oil and gas regulatory agency. And you just do a basic calculation, make sure their numbers are correct. Some operators are better about this than others, but there are times when one operator acquires another, and somehow in the transfer of assets and information, things change. I've also seen this happen when operators are upgrading their computer systems. Things also sometimes change, especially if you don't have kind of a boilerplate. There's not really a boilerplate lease, but if you have some special lease terms, those can sometimes fall off. And you need to make sure that if you have a cost-free lease, that you're not being charged for some of the expenses. So they say that inheriting minerals can be like drinking from a fire hose. There's just a lot of information, and there's a lot that you need to know about. It can be overwhelming, and some people take the challenge on and they're really excited about it, and they become very good mineral managers. Other people sit back and they leave a lot of money on the table because they're not properly managing their minerals. And then you've got the people who know they're not going to be good mineral managers, and they outsource that to someone else. And there are companies that will manage your minerals for you. They'll take care of verifying your royalty checks, they'll sign division orders and oil and gas lease, they'll negotiate the oil and gas leases. They'll do a lot of this on your behalf, and they have the expertise and the experience to do it. So that's an option as well. It probably depends on how much money you're making. If you're making very little, you probably can't justify the expense of it. But if you have a substantial amount of mineral rights and you really want to make sure you're getting the most of them, that is something to look into. Some people, when they inherit minerals, they just take it on and they're super excited and they learn and they're just like a sponge, and they just look for information and they read books and they network with other people, and it's a really fun and exciting experience. And other people are excited to have, monthly money coming in, but they don't really verify their income. They don't hire an attorney to negotiate leases. They're really passively managing their minerals, and they're probably not getting as much from them as they could be. There's also people who decide they're going to outsource their mineral management to a mineral management company, and they will do a lot of this work for you. It does come at a price, so it depends on what you're making and how much it's worth to you. But there's also people who decide they just don't want to do this, or they know that their children are not going to be good managers, and then they sell their minerals. So that is one reason that I've seen a lot of people sell. So if you're interested in selling your minerals, we buy minerals, and you can go ahead and request an offer at bluemesaminerals.com. I'll link it below.